Here's a strange thing that happened in Brazilian football this year. A coach just presided over the earliest World Cup exit his country has suffered in almost 4 decades, and instead of getting fired, he got handed the keys to rebuild the whole thing. Carlo Ancelotti isn't just staying on as Brazil's manager. In practically the same breath as confirming that, he told the country which 6 senior players are done wearing the shirt. Normally you'd expect one story or the other, a coach surviving elimination, or a coach cleaning house afterward. Getting both announcements almost back to back is what's made this whole situation so hard for Brazilian fans to process. Let's get into how we got here, who's actually leaving, and why this decision is splitting opinion all over Brazil right now. First, the result that started all of it. Brazil's 2026 World Cup ended in the round of 16, a 2-1 loss to Norway at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. The man who ended Brazil's summer wasn't some legendary rival. It was Erling Haaland, who scored both Norwegian goals. Not a household Brazilian name, just a Norwegian striker doing what he does, and suddenly the 5-time champions were on a plane home. Here's why that stings so much more than a normal early exit. Brazil hasn't lifted the World Cup since 2002. That's now a 28-year drought, the longest in the country's history. And this particular defeat pushed things further. It's the earliest Brazil has gone out of a World Cup since 1990. Sit with that for a second. 5 tournaments. Multiple coaches, multiple generations of stars. And this is the earliest any of them have been sent packing in over 3 decades. To be fair, the tournament itself hadn't been a disaster leading up to that night. Brazil opened with a 1-1 draw against Morocco, then picked up steam with 3-0 wins over Haiti and Scotland to top their group. They squeezed past Japan 1-0 in stoppage time in the round of 32. Not dominant, but they were finding ways to win. Then Norway happened, and one moment from that game is going to matter a lot for the rest of this story. Brazil had a golden chance early in the match, a penalty. It was exactly the kind of moment that could have changed everything. Vinicius Jr. had the ball in his hands but didn't take the kick himself. He handed the responsibility to Bruno Guimarães, who stepped up and saw his efforts saved by Norwegian goalkeeper Orjan Nyland. Afterward, Vinicius explained that the decision on who takes the penalty belonged to the coaching staff, and that he wasn't hiding from the moment. So Brazil are out, earliest in 36 years, and everyone assumed the manager's job was hanging by a thread. It wasn't. The Brazilian Football Confederation made its call quickly: Ancelotti stays. Rodrigo Caetano, the federation's football coordinator, went public asking fans and media for patience. Ancelotti himself, standing pitchside minutes after the final whistle, didn't sound like a man clearing out his office. He told reporters that he and his staff would simply keep doing their jobs, framing the exit not as an ending, but as the start of something. Worth remembering, this was Brazil's worst World Cup performance since a group stage elimination back in 1966. And yet, having signed a 4-year contract extension just 2 months before the tournament kicked off, Ancelotti confirmed he's staying on to oversee a new cycle, one that now runs through 2030. But here's the twist. In the same conversation where Ancelotti confirmed his own future, he started talking, just as openly, about whose future with the national team was over. The coach who survived the worst Brazilian World Cup result in 60 years turned around almost immediately and told 6 senior players their time was up. Let's start with the biggest name, because how it played out set the tone for everything that followed. Neymar's Brazil career effectively ended in the exact same stadium, on the exact same night, as Ancelotti's toughest test as coach. Getting him to this World Cup at all had been a soap opera, no call-up since 2023, sidelined by hamstring and knee injuries, even while constantly saying how badly he wanted one more tournament. Ancelotti left him out of the March friendlies entirely, then brought him back anyway for the real squad, and at 34, Neymar got his 4th World Cup. It didn't go smoothly. He picked up a calf injury on the eve of the tournament, missed the first 2 group games, and managed just 14 minutes off the bench against Scotland. Ancelotti left him out completely against Japan, and only brought him on against Norway once Brazil were chasing the game. He didn't do much with those minutes, except for one thing that mattered. Deep into stoppage time, he converted a penalty, becoming only the second Brazilian ever to score in 4 different World Cups, alongside Pelé. Ancelotti never actually had to cut Neymar. His body and the calendar did that for him. But the 2 names expected to follow him are still very much active players. Casemiro, still a regular at Manchester United, had been a fixture in Ancelotti's 11 all-tournament. Fabinho, now playing in Saudi Arabia, was right there with him too. Both were part of the experienced core Ancelotti leaned on instead of trusting younger players. This wasn't a snap decision. Even before the tournament ended, Ancelotti was already hinting his midfield needed surgery. After the Norway loss, he said plainly that players in midfield are going to have to move on. That's a coach already drafting their goodbyes. Now the defense, where Ancelotti's own squad selection became the target. Brazil's 3 goalkeepers at this World Cup were 33, 32, and 38. The average age of the called-up defenders was 31. Danilo and Sandro, the former Juventus fullbacks, are names 4 and 5, both part of an era that's now been through 3 straight painful exits, in 2018, 2022, and 2026. And that 38-year-old goalkeeper was the oldest man in the entire 26-player squad, his swan song almost certainly already sung. Ancelotti has repeated the same idea since the exit: Brazilian football needs an injection of youth. And behind the 6 departures, he's quietly been building the answer for over a year. Rayan, the uncapped Bournemouth teenager, got real minutes. So did a different Danilo, 25, from Botafogo, not the veteran fullback sharing his name. Endrick, who worked under Ancelotti at Real Madrid, earned a recall on 6 goals in 12 games on loan at Rayan, just 19 with over a dozen caps already. Not every story is smooth. João Pedro didn't even make the squad despite 29 combined goals and assists in his debut Chelsea season, a snub that looked more baffling the longer Neymar struggled for fitness. Gabriel Serra, André Santos, and a Cruzeiro left-back named Keke have all had emergency auditions in friendlies most fans outside Brazil never noticed. Every position Ancelotti is thinning out already has a younger body tested somewhere in the last year. This wasn't improvised after one bad Sunday. Even Ancelotti's own words at May's squad announcement hinted he knew the group wasn't finished. The perfect list doesn't exist, he said, and what wins tournaments is resilience, not a flawless 11. The public reaction back home hasn't been gentle. Pundit Neto called it a generation that won nothing of substance, noting 6 players on the roster shared exactly 1 Copa America title between them. Others went after the tactics. A Globo Esporte columnist noted Brazil held just 34% possession against Norway, calling it an admission of limitation rather than a plan. Ancelotti hasn't budged, saying Brazil deserved to win, and crediting Haaland rather than blaming his selections. Zoom out, and this fits a bigger trend. Brazil have lost to every European side they faced in the knockouts since 2002, including that infamous 7-1 to Germany in 2014. That history is the weight on whatever Ancelotti builds next, which is why Caetano's backing was really a bet on the rebuild already underway, one he insists runs calmly through 2030. The roster at the next Copa America will look almost nothing like the one that left New Jersey. 6 players are already being written out of Brazil's future. The only question left is who ends up writing themselves in.